for Friday, March 20th, 2020. This is the Pro and Con Show, and I'm your host, Michael James Ott. Welcome to the show. So I'm doing these shows. I try to do one every day. Don't quite make it, but I try really hard to do one every day. One, I'm trying to leave some kind of legacy here, so hopefully at some point people, much greater numbers of people will start watching these videos and start having conversation amongst ourselves about how we're going to be better citizens and better governors of our own, of ourselves here. And so that's the point of the show, is to try to get past, all of this, the great divide that the political parties and their agents have, forced upon us, or led us to, I guess is a better way to say it. They've led us that way. They've used simple tools of labels and propaganda to separate and segregate the country into basically two tribes, if you will. And I'm very happy about that, because they then have, 45% of the country in their tribe, securely within their control. And and then they only have to fight for just a small influence over another 5 or 10% of the people, and then they can get their way, basically, on both sides of that. So, and then, again, simple labels, which none of us, these really don't apply to any of us. None of us are this simple, but they use simple labels like Democrat versus Republican, liberal versus conservative, socialist versus fascist, labels like this. They use these on a regular basis, and then they pin our hot buttons, our most emotional things to them, and it's not, again, most of us, regardless of how heated the issue is, most of us have at least some reasoned understanding of what would be an appropriate thing to do, whether it's abortion or gun control or budget deficits or whatever. All of us, have some willingness to compromise, some, or almost all of us. But no, they capture these stories or these issues, and it's life or death. It's all guns or no guns, on and on and on. And of course, this is hurting us as a society. And and we're all going to fix that, though. And you're going to help, because we're all going to start talking more and more, setting aside our emotion and the anger and all that and frustration, and start talking more and more to get on that common ground, that common understanding, and be better citizens. And then, once we're kind of willing to at least talk, then we'll be at a place where we can talk about, things that will really fix our country, like the Citizen Statesman Initiative, which is the 28th Amendment, not the Equal Rights Amendment that unfortunately fell by the wayside and almost certainly is completely gone now. So another 28th Amendment, because they come in order, right? The 28th Amendment's the next one up, and that is Citizen Statesman, where we basically draft people into the government to fill those roles. And again, a big pool at first, and then we use, our intelligence and information on those people to sift through them. And step by step, we will end up with, and I guarantee you, and if you think about it, and I encourage you to think about it, if you think about it, I'm sure you'll in a reasonable amount of time, you'll come to the realization that handfuls, dozens of people in your own lives that you would feel much more comfortable with as your representative in your region, for example, in the House of Representatives. Then they go for a set, 2 or 3 year period, whatever we agree on. That's it. You go, you serve, and you're done. And then you go back to the private sector again, just like you do if you're, in the National Guard or something, or in one of the like Army, Navy Reserve or whatever. You end up getting called up to duty, and then you spend a period of time, and then you go back, and the laws are written that's supported, and we all would support it. That's the thing. Just like military duty or jury duty, we all would understand that this is a requirement of ourselves and of the people around us, and therefore we're going to support this. And wow, once you field what is really a great structure for our government, this checks and balances thing that the original folks that wrote the Constitution set up, once we filled that really excellent structure with really good people that really were not concerned about who might be king, if you will, but how they might serve, you would see a tremendous, tremendous difference. And we're going to get there someday. The question isn't can we do it or if we'll do it. The question is when. And I just don't know at what point people in general are going to be fed up enough with the way things are to take the initiative to follow through to make that improvement. But today's show is called States, and the reason why I'm just going to talk about this is that thank goodness that we have this structure where there's a large central government that kind of is kind of an overarching guider, if you will, of the law of the land. And ensures basically the protection of all states and ensures easy commerce between states and so on. And then just recently with the coronavirus outbreak and how that's being handled, it's really clear that the role of state and local governments is every bit as important as that role of the overarching role of the federal government. And why do I say that? Well, because, sometimes you have a person in a particular role in the central government, and if that person is not doing a very good job, especially relative to perceiving how things are in a particular region or a particular state, then that particular region or state often can take action independent of the central government. And this is exactly what's happened and is happening more and more over the course of days and weeks as this coronavirus pandemic, the story of it unwinds through our history. And what's going on there is the head of the central government, the singular person as president of the United States, he failed for a period of a handful of weeks to really act at all on the coronavirus issues. He failed to act, and then what happened is there were regional areas, Washington State, New York State, California, and so on, where they were recognizing that in their localities, in their states, they couldn't wait. They had to act on their own. They had to act, and they did. And they did, and the actions that several governors now and mayors of larger cities and mayors of other even smaller areas, like New Rochelle, New York, for example, all of these local leaders have done a great job, I have to say, in the face of not really getting the leadership that they needed to see from some higher place, centralized government. So they took it upon themselves to make the tough decisions to help the local regions do much better than they would otherwise. And specifically, I talk about these localized quarantines, these localized rules about, closing schools or ensuring that, small groups will not meet and closing sporting events and all this stuff. These are the things that are really, really, really going to help us. And when we look back at this, when we look back at the detailed history of this coronavirus pandemic and how it's rolling out across this country, we're going to be very, very, very thankful that all leaders in all sectors on fairly local levels did what they did. And it's not just public servant people, not just people elected to office. There's the NCAA, board of directors, the March Madness, the whole NCAA men's basketball tournament, that was closed and shut down, not by government action, but by the thought and conviction of this board of governors of the NCAA, who said this is crazy, given the coronavirus and where it's headed. We can't possibly have this tournament. We can't endanger the players. We can't endanger the fans, and it's unfortunate. And we it's going to be whatever it is. I think it's a huge number, like hundreds of millions of dollars that the NCAA won't make, or if they do make it, it's going to be greatly delayed and probably reduced, because all the fever and stuff, and no pun intended there, but all of the excitement around the NCAA tournament is going to, a lot of it will be gone because of the way things have unfolded. But facing all that, they made the right decision. And then you've got the mayor of New York, and the mayor of New Rochelle, New York, and the mayor of Los Angeles, and the mayor, and then the governors of these states. And now more and more states are basically saying, okay, we have to act. And even though the federal government won't tell us you must do these things, we're going to act locally. So Connecticut, Illinois, New Jersey, the list goes on and on and on. And it's my understanding that more and more governors are lining up and getting ready to make proclamations to basically ensure that we're all doing a lot better job quarantining ourselves to help slow. That's the key word, is to help slow the infection of various people across our population. So thank God for the states. Thank God for the other local, mayors, cities, and the structure beyond just the federal government. Thank goodness for it. Okay, so for the Pro and Con Show for Friday, March 20th, 2020, I'm Michael James Ott. I'm your host. Until the next show, bye for now.